Hey everyone, and welcome to That Was History. I'm Cliff, your host for today. In today's society, we take communication for granted. We have the ability to contact others at almost any moment. We can use our cell phones, email, social media, and other devices to reach those we need to get in touch with. Obviously, it wasn't always this easy. Speaking of which, be sure to stay tuned as we discuss the hypothesis that many believed in the 1800s concerning the ability to use snails as a means of communication. As I mentioned earlier, many believe that snails could be the answer to faster communications in the 1800s. Basically, the thought was that when two snails touch one another, they create an invisible telepathic link that is not bound by distance or any physical properties. In essence, if one snail was touched, the other snail would receive an impulse to begin moving. Where they came up with this hypothesis, we may never know. Could it have been a coincidence in earlier observation of snails? French oculist Jacques Toussaint Benoit and his colleague were the main developers of this theory concerning snails in the early 19th century, and they would try to prove their theory by creating a device known as the Pasilalinic-Sympathetic Compass that would use snails to communicate. Benoit was not a very financially successful individual and needed funding before any further work could begin. Interestingly enough, he was able to convince the manager of a Paris gymnasium to fund his work and provide him lodging for his research. Only a year after funding began, however, the manager funding Benoit's work was demanding results and wanted to see a working model of the snail device. After this, Benoit quickly revealed his apparatus. The device consisted of a wooden box with a horizontal disc inside, and within the disc there were 24 holes, with each one of these holes containing a zinc dish. The zinc dish was then lined with a cloth soaked in copper sulfate solution. In order to operate the contraption, a snail was glued in place at the bottom of each of the 24 holes and was then assigned a letter of the alphabet. An identical second device was then created in the same fashion, with snails labeled according to their linked partner in the first box. In theory, a person should be able to touch a snail, and someone observing the second box should see their linked snail respond to the stimulation placed upon the first snail. Then, as you could probably guess, it would be a simple matter of writing down the letters and then grouping them in order to read the message that was sent. So, does this theory actually work? Are the snails in these devices really able to telepathically communicate? To answer that, let's look at October 2nd of 1851. On this day, the first trial of Benoit's device would commence. The gymnasium manager who was funding his project, as well as a journalist from the local newspaper, were present. They were in charge of one of the boxes, and Benoit was handling the receiving end. The idea was that they were supposed to spell something out, and he would tell them what they sent. The only problem was that Benoit was constantly walking between his station and theirs. This led the gymnasium manager to question the integrity of the project, and requests were made for a second, stricter trial of the experiment. When it came time for the test, Benoit was nowhere to be found. He and his snails had vanished. What's interesting is that the journalist who observed the first trial was convinced that the Pasilalinic-Sympathetic Compass worked and went on to write a full-fledged article on it that appeared in newspapers on October 27th of 1851. This device also showed up in the 1889 book entitled Historic Oddities and Strange Events. Now to the fun part. Do you think that Benoit genuinely believed that his snail theory would work, or was this a master scheme to steal all the money he could from anyone who was foolish enough to give it to him? Let us know in the comments section down below. Thanks for watching this outrageous episode from That Was History. You can check out more from us by using the links on screen, and be sure to thumbs up this episode and share this snail of a tale with your friends. Be sure to come back Friday, and I'll see you there.